You know what, my friend? I should come visit you soon in Lagos.
Fela and Sankara were close friends. But after the demise of Sankara, Fela returned to Burkina Faso to avenge Sankara. This is how it all went down. Early in 1987, an admiral of Fela, the president of Burkina Faso, invited Fela and Femi Falana to his country. Thomas Sankara was a big fan of them both for their selfless and fearless activism. He had invited them to the 1987 Pan-African Film and Television Festival of Ouagadougou, where they were to all catch up. The goal of the festival was to create a continental platform where African filmmakers could tell their own stories free from colonial influence and European control of film distribution. The visit was slated for July. Last-minute preparations almost made Fela miss the trip. He and his brother, Dr. Beko, visited the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, who on instruction of President IBB made the trip happen. Fela finally made the trip, but Falana couldn't because his passport was seized by the authorities at the time. Fela's presence as guest of honor at the 1987 festival in Ouagadougou electrified the atmosphere. Moving through the crowds with his companions, the Afrobeat icon drew excitement wherever he appeared. At one point, reports say Fela boldly confronted soldiers questioning festival attendees, securing their release to loud cheers. Fela would also perform at the festival to the delight of everyone. Soon afterwards, President Thomas Sankara met with him at the festival and invited Fela over to the presidential palace the next day. At the palace, Sankara granted Fela audience where they got to speak on lots of their work. Sankara told Fela all about the challenges he is overcoming with his people in a bid to build a new country. Later in the day, they will hang out again, sharing a lot of the challenges they shared in common, plus their dreams for a great Africa.
You know what, my friend? I should come to visit you soon in Lagos. Yes, you must come.
Sankara promised to visit Fela in Lagos. This acquaintance of theirs will grow into a great friendship. Upon Fela's return to Lagos, he was pulled aside for questioning, but when told the powers behind his travel, they freed and passed him through immediately. Afterwards, this trip inspired Fela to compose one of his most iconic songs, Underground System. His friendship with Sankara, made in Burkina Faso, will grow into an enviable one. They will spend time every now and then chatting on the phone, discussing their many issues. Indeed, Sankara would later honor Fela with a return visit to Lagos. Arriving on a diplomatic mission, he spent a memorable time at Fela's home and his legendary club, The Shrine. Months later, on Fela's birthday, Thomas Sankara was betrayed, overthrown, and he lost his life in a coup led by Blaise Compaoré. He was just 38. Sold out by his closest ally, his location was compromised during a meeting with his ministers. Surrounded, he was calm and resolute. Thomas Sankara courageously stepped forward. "It's me you want. Let the rest go." But he and all of them were all. When the news reached Fela Kuti, he was shattered, utterly inconsolable, especially that it had all happened on his birthday, October 15, 1987. To appease the people of Burkina Faso months later, Blaise Compaoré tried to endear himself to his country people by throwing a spectacle, inviting Fela to thrill the people in a concert. Fela, who confided in a friend, Barrister Femi Falana, now a learned silk, asked Fela if he was sure of wanting to do the concert. Fela told him of his plans, which got Mr. Falana asking him again, "Are you really sure of your plans?" On arrival, from the airport to the city center, Burkina Faso rolled out the red carpet to give Fela a grand welcoming. The next day was concert day. The moment he reached the grounds of the stadium, the atmosphere exploded. A thunderous sea of fans surged forward. His boss had to battle its way through the crowd, pushing past waves upon waves of admirers just to break into the stadium. And then it was another fierce struggle across the pitch before he could finally mount the stage. Once on stage, Fela electrified the audience with his presence, dazzling them for a while before launching into songs praising Thomas Sankara to the delight of the crowd, at the same time boldly delivering sharp, biting, insulting lyrics aimed at the ruling leadership of Burkina Faso. His music was just too good. The crowd was wild. But inside the stadium, powerful men of the government were furious. The order rang out, "Stop Fela now." Within moments, soldiers stormed the stage, but Fela and his band kept playing, defiant to the very last tune, until they were grabbed and dragged off. The crowd erupted into chaos. Cheers flew in all directions, people screaming, and the stadium turned into a battlefield of noise and confusion.
Stop this! You can't do this!
While Fela and his band were dragged towards a military truck nearby, more chaos broke out. The soldiers had to force their way through the raging crowd who pelted them with all sorts. Eventually, they were shoved into the truck, which had to force its way through the angry mob, hurling stones at them all the way out of the stadium.
Me and them today. Yes.
Luckily for Traoré, he missed it all, for he had cancelled his attendance in the last minute as advised by his security. The outbreak of public disorder was massive, so intense at the stadium it poured out onto the streets furiously. Behind the scenes, panic gripped the regime. With the streets boiling, security around Traoré was tightened instantly. Soldiers were unleashed on the streets, commanded to do one thing and one thing only: liquidate the uprising by any means necessary. The drive to the hotel was wild. The mob chased them all through. At the hotel, all their belongings were scattered and searched furiously. What came in that a rude crowd was heading towards the hotel. This made the soldiers end their search and hurriedly drag Fela, his band members, including the ladies, with all their damaged luggage, back to the truck for another rough ride to the airport, where they were flung on the next flight out of Ouagadougou. At this point, Fela had given Traoré a good run for his money. A foreigner who insulted and humiliated a whole sitting president in his country turned his capital upside down, almost to the tipping point where his government could have been brought down, giving him the biggest fright of his life. By this, Olufela Omo Iyaje Anikulapo Kuti got his pound of pure flesh and unprecedented vengeance for Sankara, his friend. Being deported, they were to be on their way back to Lagos. But no, they were dumped on the tarmac of an airport in Côte d'Ivoire. Left stranded, Fela had to use his self-recognition to hire buses to take them all the way back home.